Okay, good evening. Welcome to the virtual college exploration for all Illinois students, sponsored by the Illinois Association for College Admission Counseling and StriveScan. Thank you for joining us. A few housekeeping issues before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenter at any time. Your camera and microphone are off so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is just one of the many different sessions happening, so be sure to check out the full schedule at IACAC.org. This presentation is being recorded and will be available in about a week. Same website, IACAC.org. I'd now like to turn it over to our presenter from Case Western Reserve University.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with everybody tonight. I hope all is good with everybody. Everybody is healthy, and it's kind of an interesting night to be talking to the Chicagoland area in that our Cleveland Indians are playing the White Sox tonight, and I don't know what the score is, but if I'm talking to any Southsiders out there, we hope we have a good game, and we can both hope for who wins. But great rivalry between the two cities, and happy to be here. So. My name is Tom Fanning. I'm the Senior Associate Director of Undergraduate Admission at Case Western Reserve University. And probably most importantly, I'm in charge of recruitment in Illinois. So again, it's an honor to be here. And there is a likelihood, if you do decide to apply for admission, that I would be one of the people reading the applications. Again, happy to meet you virtually. Look forward to that point in time or that day when you can make a trip to Cleveland and visit campus if you like what you hear tonight. So I have a slide deck that I want to go to and give you an overview of who we are at Case Western Reserve University. And I will be watching the questions if people do have questions. But my goal here is with my presentation is to cover everything that you need to know as you embark on this college search. So give me a second here while I share the screen and we'll launch into my presentation. All right, here we go. So Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. If you get on Interstate 90 in Chicago, head east for about 6 hours, take the exit in Cleveland, and you are at Case Western Reserve University. It strikes me as we go through this recruitment process that every school is going to have a picture similar to what you see on the screen here with all the happy people sitting on picnic tables, riding their bikes, a beautiful sunny day. And it seems to me, and my guess is that you're getting email from thousands of colleges, and we probably all look the same in the pamphlets and in the pictures. But I'm here today to try and give you an overview. And some of the things I'm going to talk about today, you might find at other schools, but we very deliberately wanted to tell you who we think we are, because in the admission process, we're looking for students who would love this place, who would say, yes, this is a place where I can launch my future, launch my careers, launch my academic interests, meet the friends of my life. So we're looking for people who might like what we have to offer here. So Case Western Reserve University, Cleveland, Ohio. First thing I want to tell you, though, is the connection between Cleveland and Chicago is strong. I looked over the last 4 years. We have enrolled 355 students from the greater Chicagoland area, representing 106 different schools. And when we look at our alumni chapter, it is one of the largest alumni chapters in the world, with 3,095 living alumni who are living and working in the greater Chicagoland area. So your connections would be strong. And over the last 4 years, maybe you'll find your school on this list. These are all the schools from whom we've enrolled students. Now, if your school is not on this list, well, we want to change that. But my point here is there's good, strong Cleveland to Chicago connections in the college recruitment for Case Western Reserve University. So we're gratified by the interest, and we'd like to continue this this juggernaut rolling as we embark on this recruitment season as we start to receive applications. So let me tell you who I think we are at Case Western Reserve. First of all, academic institution. There are over 96 different programs of study, and we're probably best known in the marketplace of higher education for our STEM fields and many of the pre-professional programs, pre-med, pre-dent, pre-law. We have a medical school, a dental school, a law school at Case Western Reserve. Again, but historically, a lot of the STEM areas, and the largest department at Case Western Reserve is biomedical engineering. But to say that doesn't give credence to the breadth of the different programs you can choose. You can major in dance, you can major in art, you can major in music, you can major in the classics, you can major in philosophy. The Weatherhead School of Management is our business school, so all of the business majors, accounting, management, finance. So there are all kinds of opportunities, but one of the things that might be distinctive about us compared to all the schools you're going to look at is when you apply for admission to Case Western Reserve University, you're applying to the university and not necessarily to a specific department. So the university has 4 different colleges of the university: the College of Arts and Sciences, the School of Engineering, the Weatherhead School of Management, which is their business school, and the Bolton School of Nursing. If you're offered admission to Case Western Reserve, you may choose any major that you want, with one exception. The music major requires a video audition come in addition to your application for admission to make sure you have some prowess on your instrument if you want to major in music. But other than that, you can major in anything you want. There's no need for direct entry to nursing. If you're offered admission, you are in. You don't have to be admitted specially to the engineering department. This breaks down all kinds of barriers amongst all these different disciplines. And what most of our students love about this is it breaks down those barriers to the point where students can double major, major and minor across different colleges of the university. So it's not uncommon at Case Western Reserve to have engineers double majoring in music, or to have philosophy majors who might be thinking of med school, or to have business majors who are taking STEM classes because they might want to work for a tech company someday. So we're built for that flexibility, and the students who love Case Western Reserve love that flexibility, and they take full advantage of it. Second piece I want to point out is that we are a top 20 research institution. There are about 3,000 schools in the United States. Case Western Reserve is currently ranked number 17 in funded research. That's public data that you can get. Effectively a top 20 institution, but also realize that we're a school of 5,200 undergraduates and then 6,500 graduate level students. For being a top 20 research institution, we are a modest size, and what that should turn out to mean for you as a student is that your ability to engage often in the research side of academia is there for undergraduates. 99% of our students are listed as doing some kind of experiential learning, internships, co-ops, research. 84% of our undergrads are listed as members, official members of a research project that, should that lead to publication, that means your name goes on it. That authorship is huge in academia. It's the coin of the realm. So we're the kind of school where the question isn't whether or not you'll be actively engaged in research, it's what will you do? And we think that's the experience you'd have if you came to a place like Case Western Reserve. We are also a school not only that does that research with all the flexibility in the academic programs, but has the resources to do this in the top level. And one of the more famous buildings on campus is called ThinkBox. It is a 7-story warehouse that houses 7 stories of makerspace. It is the largest academic makerspace in the country under one roof, and it's open access for anybody with an idea. High-end resources, the highest end 3D printers, the laser cutters. So the point I want to make here is we have the resources and we have the expertise to be able to have all these students with these great ideas and help them bring those ideas to fruition. So we want to be the kind of place where ideas come to life. And that's what we think we are at Case Western Reserve. So I would be remiss if I didn't talk about our connection to the city and all the opportunities that surround us. We're in a neighborhood called University Circle, which is the neighborhood of Cleveland. And you can see the bird's eye view of where we sit relative to downtown. It's about 5 miles from downtown. So people go downtown because it's home to Fortune 500 companies. It's home to all our athletic venues, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and all the great things that downtown can offer. But if you were to stay in our neighborhood, realize that you'll be surrounded by all of the iconic cultural institutions in Cleveland. At the end of our street, the Cleveland Museum of Art exists. 40,000 masterworks, free and open to the public, one of the country's best art museums. Right across the street from that is Severance Hall. That's home to Cleveland's orchestra. The Cleveland Orchestra is one of the big five in the country. This is right on the campus. You're going to pass by all these iconic institutions on the way to the dining hall. So it rounds out a life on campus that you're not going to find at many places. So well, I'm not done yet, though, besides all the cultural institutions and Case Western Reserve, the university. We also are surrounded by three major research hospitals, the university hospitals, the Cleveland VA, which is the third largest VA in the country, and the world-renowned Cleveland Clinic. These are all walking distance from campus, from the Tinkerville University Center, which is the student center on our campus. So think about the opportunities if you're in clinical rotations doing anything connected with healthcare. By the way, we opened our brand new health education campus last summer. It was a joint venture between Case Western Reserve and the Cleveland Clinic. It now houses with state-of-the-art facilities, our medical school, our dental school, and our nursing school. And by the way, for any of you, anybody politically active out there, next on the 29th of September, this health education campus, this building is going to be hosting the first presidential debate. So we're all enthused about that, and they're prepping it now. But this is a big deal, and we're very proud of our campus. And if you're going to choose Case Western Reserve University, whether or not when you showed up, you will become a Cleveland lover. I pretty much guarantee that, because the students who love Case Western Reserve will use the city of Cleveland often. And that's important to know, because you come live here. It's a residential campus. All first year and second year students must live on campus. Third and fourth year, you can live on campus or choose to move off if you want. But it's a residential campus, so you have all this activity 24/7. And when so many people live on campus, all your performing arts ensembles, your athletic teams, your clubs and intramurals, the Greek life, cultural and religion activities, all thrive on our campus. Not that we're the only school that's like this, but it's a residential campus, and we expect your life would be full of these kinds of activities. So that, in a nutshell, is our overview of who we think we are, and the promise of what you would see if you came to Case Western Reserve. And truly, we're looking for people that find that intriguing, that think, maybe that might be a great place for me to pick for my college career, or at least my undergraduate career. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about the admission process. So inevitably, the admission process tends to start off by talking about grade point averages and test scores, but I want to tell you why we do admission, what happens here, and what we're looking for. So first of all, we need people to be academically competitive. We need people to be successful at our institution. We also are looking for students that are going to come contribute to our campus life with all those activities and all the things that go on in a residential community. We think we're a better educational institution if we could build diversity and as much talent as we can into the class. And that means diversity in all different ways you can think about it. Racial, gender, gender expression, socioeconomic, points of view, parts of the country, parts of the world. So we're really looking to try and build a very interesting and talented class. And then ultimately, I mentioned earlier that we have 96 different programs of study. We have to fill all of them. So if we're so well known for all the engineering areas, we could fill our class maybe with biomedical engineering applicants. But if we were to do that, the accounting professors won't be all that happy, nor will the dance professors. So the goal here is to make sure that we have filled all the different programs of study at Case Western Reserve. So these are the main considerations when we go about making admission decisions. And I can tell you that beyond the numbers, I'm going to talk about the numbers in a second, but we're looking for students who are academically prepared. And we always have to look at the classes you've taken, the kind of school you're coming from. So the school context is important to us. If people have figured out that they're interested in different careers or majors, and if we see you've been actively involved beyond the classroom in those areas, that's always an impressive thing to us. We love people who were involved in their communities in high school, whether that was joining clubs or maybe the orchestra, or maybe doing service in your community. Those traits we love. When I talk about approach to school, do you love the academic enterprise? Are you intellectually curious? Sometimes we can read different recommendation letters and get some sense of how much you love school, and those things are important to us. And then ultimately, are you a leader? Are you a good person? Would you be a good roommate? Are you open to others? Are you welcoming? All these things come into play when you go through the admission process. But I know this doesn't do justice to actually talking about the credentials of the students coming in. Inevitably, people start talking about grade point averages and standardized test scores. Big announcement in March when we knew we were heading into the pandemic scenario, and test scores or test sittings for SAT and ACT were being canceled. Case Western Reserve faculty voted to be test optional for the fall of 21. So if you are a senior and choosing to apply, you're going to have a choice on whether or not you want to send SAT or ACT scores. So in the past, we had required those tests. We are a super scoring school. But this year we are test optional, and that's test optional for everything. Test optional for admission, test optional for all of our special programs, test optional for need-based and academic merit-based considerations. So we really don't want to have any guile about this. If you have a test score and you think it's strong and you want to submit it, we would certainly consider that for admission and all of the other criteria I talked about. But we know full well that many tests have been canceled, or your test site was located 300 miles from your home, and we really don't want people driving 300 miles to sit for a test when we are perfectly willing to make a decision based on all those bullet points that I had up on the previous screen. So we're equally proud of what's on the left-hand side of the screen as we are on the right-hand side of the screen. And then your academic performance in the classroom and the kind of classes you took are very important to us. So there's so much more that goes into the admission decisions. It's a competitive student body. We're proud of that. And we think that matches well with the kind of offerings and resources that we have, and the kind of history that we have. But nonetheless, we don't simply line people up by the numbers to make our admission decisions. And we wanted to try and drive that point home as much as we could. Now, if you're going to apply for admission, there are all kinds of decision plans you can choose. And you'll likely be working with your college counselors at your high schools to figure out which would be the best for you. So realize that any decision plan along the left-hand column that says early decision is one of those binding commitments where you're telling the school, I've done my college search. If you admit me, I'm going to withdraw all my other applications at different schools and enroll. That's a relatively small percentage of the applicant pool at Case Western Reserve. Excuse me. Every other program that you see listed on this screen here is a non-binding scenario. And for fall admission, May 1st would be the reply deadline. And I need to make mention here of the pre-professional scholars program, which would be unique to Case Western Reserve in that this is a conditional admit program to our medical school and our dental school. And it has a different timetable because the med school and the dental school admission committees are involved in making this decision. So the timetable does not work with early action or ED1. What happens with the pre-professional scholars program is that if a student is admitted into the program, if they take the pre-med track at Case Western Reserve and they have a minimum grade point average, then they do not have to take the MCAT and they have a guaranteed spot in the medical school or the dental school. So just number-wise, for that specific program, last year we had roughly 2,500 applicants. We have room for 60 interviews and there are 20 slots for the program. So, and I'm on the committee, I do interviews for this program and I do review the applications. These are some of the best applicants I see in a year, but we only have 20 slots. And so if somebody is not offered one of those interviews or one of those slots, their application then is reviewed and notified according to the regular decision timetable. So we would still love to enroll those students, but with the pre-professional scholars program, we have 10 slots for the medical school and 20 spots for the medical school and roughly 10 spots for the dental school. If you know you want to go to medical or dental school, those are really nice programs. But again, the numbers are slightly daunting, but it's a program that's great if you know what your path is and what your goals are. So another issue I want to talk about is the concern about the cost that many of our families have. We're a private institution. There's no differentiation of cost between in-state and out-of-state students. And we are one of the schools in the country that if families are concerned about cost and you fill out the financial aid forms that we ask for, that gives us some indication what family resources can bear. Well, our cost minus what your family resources can bear equals your demonstrated need. We are one of the schools in the country that will guarantee to meet 100% of that difference. Many schools will not have the resources to fund that fully or guarantee it, but we will. So in theory, we can make it possible that anybody comes. So if you sit down with your family and there's concern about costs, we do ask for anybody applying for need-based aid that we receive the CSS profile, which you can find the link on our website, or if you Google it, you'll find it. And that's for all students, both domestic and international. If you are a domestic student, have U.S. citizenship status, then we also ask for the FAFSA form, which is the free application for federal student aid. And those two forms give us the information we need to make a need-based aid award. Now, we are also a school that offers merit-based scholarship based on your application for admission, no separate application for this pool of funding. And about a third of our offers of admission every year go out the door with a merit scholarship offer, and that ranges between $10,000 per year up to $30,000 per year. We do this because we recognize the competition in the great schools many of our students are applying to, and it's trying to add to the competitive nature to try and enroll those students who qualify for the merit-based scholarship at Case Western Reserve. So that's between $10,000 and $30,000 per year. It's renewable each year if you stay in good academic standing, which we would expect. So it's a nice bonus. There's no separate application other than the application for admission with that pool of funds. I want to make one last note that some of our academic departments have their own endowments that might have their own scholarships. I know that our music department, our dance department, the classics department have some of their own scholarship money. And if you were to look at the scholarship tab at Case Western Reserve University, you'll find those individual scholarships that might have separate applications. But those are the departmentals, competitive scholarships, which is different than that pool of funds for the merit money that I alluded to just a second ago. So I wanted to make you aware that those exist at Case Western Reserve. So the goal is make it possible that you come financially, and then in about a third of their offers of admission with the merit scholarship money to swing the decision in our favor to try and recruit, enroll a portion of the first year class coming in. So that is a quick overview of the process that we have set up at Case Western Reserve, and hopefully that answers some of the questions that you might have. But we look forward to the time, again, when we can invite you to campus and you can see how interesting a place it is. And just this last slide here is some of the really interesting architecture you'd find around the campus. It's a really kind of an eclectic, interesting place, surrounded by all the cultural institutions and the art museum. And we love our campus and we love showing it off. And as I said, we look forward to the time when we can do that. So I'm going to stop the sharing here and maybe move over to see if there's any questions that maybe I left hanging as I went about our conversation here. Yeah, I don't see any questions here, and but I want to tell you a little bit more about the institution. It's an interesting name, by the way, Case Western Reserve University. So I tell you this in the interest of not only giving you some background and some history about us, but also, you know, good trivia. If you compete in trivia games, or if you're ever on Jeopardy and you get these questions, maybe, hopefully, if it's a daily double, you can pay for your college with your winnings. But Case Western Reserve University is actually the amalgamation of two different institutions with very unique histories. The oldest of the two institutions that merged to make Case Western Reserve is Western Reserve University, which was originally founded in 1826, a very old classic institution with very progressive roots. And it was founded in Hudson, Ohio, which is about 26 miles from our current location in Cleveland. Hudson is a small town designed as a New England town back in the early 1800s. And the term Western Reserve actually comes from the idea that the colony of Connecticut before the U.S. Revolution and before the founding of the U.S. United States, the colony of Maryland had northern and southern boundaries, but no western boundaries other than as far as they had explored. And so this portion of northeastern Ohio was called the Western Reserve of Connecticut. That's where that term comes from. So again, if you ever get that question on Jeopardy, there you go. You have that answer. And again, hopefully it's a daily double. Second piece I want to talk about is the Case School of Applied Science, or the Case Institute of Technology, which has its own very worthy history, founded in Cleveland. And for many years, Case Institute of Technology and Western Reserve University, once that had moved from Hudson up to Cleveland, they were separated by a fence, literally right next door to each other as separate institutions and actually big athletic rivals. Well, ultimately, and Case has a long, rich history, which actually, here's a trivia question for you. The first American-born Nobel laureate is a Case Western Reserve or a Case Institute of Technology person. The Michelson-Morley experiment done in the 1800s measured the speed of light through what they considered the atmosphere was made up of ether, and realized that the speed of light did not change when it was going with or against the flow of ether. And that experiment and that set of calculations won the first American-born Nobel Prize. And it was used as partial proof of Einstein's theory of relativity. So there's a lot of rich history at Case Western Reserve University. And again, hopefully that little bit of trivia will help us stand out in the marketplace of higher education. So I do see some questions here. The first question is about the Pre-Professional Scholars Program, a place where you can find scores for the students admitted to the Pre-Professional Scholars Program. We don't have an amalgamated score or an average score for that group. Realize that that group is going to be a competitive academic group, but most applicants are going to be in competitive range of those who might be chosen. The big differentiator with the Pre-Professional Scholars Program is really not going to be whether or not your test scores are higher or grades are higher. Most of those students are going to have real strong math and science backgrounds. But the biggest differentiator, honestly, is the discussion about how do you know you want to be a doctor? When you're filling out the application for admission and you check the box that says you want to be considered for the Pre-Professional Scholars Program, there are 2 supplemental essays that you'll be asked to complete. And the first question really is about how do you know you want to be a doctor? Have you had any shadowing experiences or any research lab experiences? How do you know you want to be a doctor? And that's different than I have good science background and good math background. And then the second question is, tell us something about yourself that we don't already know. Because the med school and the dental schools are going to be concerned that you've developed the worldliness and possibly the maturity and empathy to be able to deliver patient care, which is different than being a researcher. So a lot of this is a focus on how will you be in delivering patient care to people. So those tend to be some of the bigger questions in reviewing the applicants for the Pre-Professional Scholars Program. So yes, it's true. Typically, they're in the probably in the upper 25% with the testing and the grades of the applicant pool. And you can find the whole profile of the class out on our website. But there's much more. you know, the med school and the dental school love people who are engaged in their communities, who develop leadership skills, collaboration skills. Delivering healthcare is all collaborative. You're working with nurses, you're working with other health professionals. So all of those things come into play. And that's why ultimately of the group that applies to the group that's offered an interview, that interview is more about how do you get along with people? How do you engage others? So those are pretty important considerations. So again, more questions about the pre-professional scholars program. If you apply, I mentioned this when you looked at the grid on how the different program plans work. But if you apply for the pre-professional scholars program and are not offered one of the slots, then we would reply back to you to ask if you'd like to be considered in the regular admission round. Now, certainly, there are plenty of students where the only reason they liked us was because of the program. And if they're not offered a slot, then they don't like us very much anymore. We understand that. As I said, those are some of the most competitive applicants I've seen, and realize that we are graduating over 100 students every year from Case Western Reserve who are going off to medical school. Only 20 of them could be PPSP. So most of our pre-med students are not operating with that conditional guarantee of admit to our medical or dental schools. So, so we certainly hope that people would still consider us even if they don't have that program. And I make the flippant joke, doesn't mean to be flippant, but it's true. If the med school would give us 2,500 spots, we could probably fill all of them with qualified applicants. So it's a wonderful program, but there are only 20 slots for the med school. So, and I have a question. Yeah, so here's a really good question about a discussion about whether or not somebody took easier classes and developed a higher GPA than somebody who took more competitive classes. The second bullet point when I talked about considerations for admission was all about context, school context. So we have long histories with many of the schools that send us applications, and even if we don't, we're looking very closely at the profiles that schools send to us. It's my job in Illinois to make sure the rest of our admission committee understands the backgrounds of the schools and the context of the schools. We look at what percent go on to four-year colleges. We look at if we have history with the schools. And then when you talk about whether or not somebody took the quote-unquote easier classes and was able to attain a higher GPA, truth is you really can't even talk about grade point averages until you look at what classes are being taken. And that's a very, very, very important part of our process, is considering what your choices were and what kind of choices you made in your curriculum selection that you made. So when you get right down to the practical matter of how we do this, we look at the 5 traditional college prep areas in every applicant that comes in. So English, math, science, social science, and language. And we look at what your choices were at your school and try and consider what choices you made and how rigorous were those choices, okay? Now, we're dealing with schools from around the world, and so you would have to trust that we understand the different contexts that we're looking at. So even around the Chicagoland area, there's so many schools that with very interesting and different curricula. Well, that's our job, is to figure out what we have and what your choices were. So now it makes sense for people heading into STEM areas to have strong math and science rigor. And maybe we'd be less concerned about whether or not there was rigor in English or languages. And that might be flipped in our consideration for somebody who might want to study history and go to law school, or to study international relations, where we might be less concerned about the math and science areas, which is not to say that we don't want people to have backgrounds in those areas, because truly the way our curriculum is set up, it's pretty interdisciplinary in the way it works and the way a lot of our students operate. So with the applicant pool that we have, most of our students are pretty strong students, but as far as developing the discussion of rigor. We're not necessarily expecting everybody to max out on every AP class that's ever offered at their high school. We do hope that you pursue the greatest rigor in the areas where you have the most interest and where you have the most aptitude and curiosity. And I mean aptitude, and that's a very important consideration, because sometimes we see people load up on AP classes but struggle in them. And we look at those and we think, well, maybe that's inappropriate to be in those classes. What you should be in those classes where you have the most aptitude and the most interest. So when you start having the discussion about the rigor, and maybe about AP scores or IB scores or dual enrollment credit, we really, the applicants that read best for us are those that have maybe not picked their major or their career path, but have some idea of the direction they're heading. And then following those pursuits in choices they made both inside and outside of the classroom. So somebody had a question about whether or not we accept AP scores. If you took an AP test and you scored 4 or 5, in most cases, that would bring credit to Case Western Reserve. There is a grid on our website. If you use the search engine, you'll find that grid that shows what scores on AP tests, also with IB tests. And then so many of our students come in with dual enrollment credit based on high school offerings or college offerings in their area, if they've exhausted what the high school can offer. So yes, we do accept credit coming in. Let's see. All right. Any other questions that people want to put out there while I'm here? Okay.
Well, thank you very much for the great presentation. Attending,
Sure.
thank you for joining us. There's going to be a quick survey after you close this window. It's 4 questions. We would appreciate any feedback you can provide. And as mentioned earlier, this is just one of many sessions being hosted, so be sure to sign up for any additional sessions at IACAC.org. And again, in about a week, you will find this session's recordings as well as all the other session recordings at IACAC.org. Thank
Very
you.
good. Well, thank you so much for listening, and thank you for hosting.
Have a good night, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye.